Welcome back, everybody. Today, as we attempt to continue to look for the hero's journey element in every single bit of media and story we can possibly find, we're going to be dissecting the song called Schism by Tool today. We're going to look in the elements that are patterned a little over relationship, and we're going to see how the truths in this song echo to our souls and even call out to us a bit. So I hope you stick with me on this. Today, we're going to start out in the factual realm, at least as far as I can tell. I got my dictionary here. So the first thing we have to do is we have to define our terms. We're going to define schism, and I prefer this as opposed to the online, always potentially tamperable definition that is onlinedictionary.com. So schism, there are two definitions here. The first one is the act or process of dividing. Also, discord, or division. Number two, a formal division in or separation from a religious body. So on doing some research on the song, because that's what you should always do before you try to, express your opinion to see if other people actually have the same exact one, like you're one of a clone, or to see how simple or shallow they all are. It seems to me the religious element is something that's very much a voice. This song is all about the issue of separating God from the church and the maybe romantic kind of division as well. And I think it is. But I also think it's something else. I also think it's more pattern on reality as far as we're looking at the known, the unknown, and the knower. But you'll have to hang on to the end to figure that part out. Or at least figure it out with me. Maybe you already figured it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the lyrics just so we're familiar with it. If you're unsure, if you don't want to hear me say it, that's fine. Fast forward through this. Click down below. I have the link to the video, which is pretty good. The video itself is very symbolic and probably needs a whole other unpacking of it just because of the symbolism involved in the images, obviously. But those are two separate things. I'm going to focus on the lyrics specifically. Once I go through the lyrics once, then we'll dissect them line by line, and we're going to see what calls out to us and how that song can speak some truth into our lives, perhaps. The song is very precious to a lot of people. I know the pieces fit, I watch them fall away, mildewed and smouldering, fundamental and differing. Pure intention juxtaposed will set two lovers' souls in motion, disintegrating as it goes, testing our communication. The light that fused our fire then has burned a hole between us, so we cannot seem to reach an end, crippling our communication. I know the pieces fit because I watch them tumble down. No fault, none to blame. It doesn't mean I don't desire to point the finger and blame the other. Watch the temple topple over to bring the pieces back together, rediscovered communication. There was a time that the pieces fit, but I watched them fall away, mildewed and smoldering, strangled by our coveting. I've done the math enough to know the dangers of our second guessing, doomed to crumble unless we grow and strengthen our communication. Cold silence has a tendency to atrophy any sense of compassion between supposed lovers. So I'm going to attempt to take reference to my notes. Usually I have it on the screen up here, but it kind of puts a weird glare on myself. This seems to be the best way for me to study. There's something about handwritten, tangible letters that I really grab. I like books, like ebooks. They're just not for me. I'm going to read a tangible book I can have my hands around. And just need getting a little collection of a library, Anyway, so I know the pieces fit. I watch them fall away. That is your point of reference. That's like known as your Edenic past. You know everything was together. It's extremely important when it comes to the mythic concept of a creation story. Every culture has a creation story with the exception of, as far as I can tell, like ancient creation story, China. China doesn't seem to have an authentic, archaeologically evidenced creation story. They say they do, but they don't. It's, as far as I can tell, in the evidence that shows, and this is per like Joseph Campbell, so I haven't researched a lot of this, but at least the bit I know and the bit I'm familiar with is they manufacture their own creation story. And why is that important? Well, it tells you how things were, and you're sort of aiming for that in the future, like how you want things to be. This is why you have a terrible childhood. Oftentimes your adulthood is going to be the same way. Oftentimes, not all the time. And the Edenic past is ruled by a non-intentional agency. That means you're just compelled to keep things going as they are. You follow the natural law as it just kind of goes. You're less an individual and more of like, I don't even know, like a collective. You act upon your nature. Like this little beast here, he's going to act like a cat. Felines act like felines. They're not going to switch and become dog-like tomorrow. That's not something that happens. So our human nature, that's when the pieces fit. When we were at one with our nature. But the falling away, that's paired with mildewed and smoldering. So there's two parts to this. The mildewed part, assumes stagnation, assumes saturation. The smoldering part obviously assumes fire. So is it both of those? Like, which one did that? Maybe it is both of those, because that's what happens if you have something that's structured and it gets torn away somehow. It's either by, well, maybe too much movement or too little movement. Obviously, the lack of connecting bonds will make things just fall off. And then if you have too much of a connecting bond, that's like atoms smashing together. So it's one or the other. And that's interesting because it also pairs with a part in the book of Revelation when God is talking to, or Christ, it doesn't matter which one, is talking to the lukewarm church. And he says, I'd rather you be hot or cold, but because you're lukewarm, I'm going to vomit you out of my mouth. There's something about having intentionality in life that God is for, especially in the scriptures. Before something or something else, but apathy is looked at as worse than either of those. It's like your non-participation in life. Fundamental and differing. So I think this has a little bit to do with the masculine and the feminine. And this is, again, per Joseph Campbell, the mythic symbolism of the feminine extracted from the masculine is also on par with man falling from perfection, because perfection is singular. Once you have two, they can't rise to perfection. Like, they're different things. Perfection is just one. There's only one perfect whatever. So if you're distinguishable from something else, you're no longer in the realm of perfection. But that was kind of the first thing that God did to the cosmos. If you want to go to the scriptures, let there be light. Light enables you to distinguish something from something else. Chaos and order. Pure intention juxtaposed will set two lovers' souls in motion. So this is like the embodiment of the masculine and the feminine, their duties in those roles. One desires, one wishes to be desired. And that's like the pursuer and the pursued. And they both want to do that. The one wants to be pursued, one wants to pursue. And that's their pure intentions, the agencies that are switched, they're juxtaposed, will set two lovers' souls in motion. So that's like the singular. You split it apart into two. It's a duality. Now it circles around itself like the positron and the electron, disintegrating as it goes and testing our communication. As we are two separate beings at this moment, the masculine and the feminine, and that's also etched in myth and obviously etched in our biology. If you stay the same and don't grow in your relationship and don't have strong communication bonds, that can get frictional really quick. There has to be something else beyond the agency that attracts you to whatever you're going toward, which is the masculine and the feminine, because there's an attraction to being pursued from the feminine perspective, and obviously beauty, the visual agency, works on the masculine. So why is that testing communication? Well, that's like testing your intentional relationship. If I say to my wife, you're not listening to me, and she says to me, you're not listening to me, this can mean two totally different things if we don't know each other. Mine can literally mean you can't hear me because you're preoccupied with something else. Hers can mean you're not understanding the actual problem, even though, so she maybe have trouble articulating it, I'm having trouble with my volume. They mean two different things, but if we know each other, like maybe she knows I'm hard of hearing out of my right ear. Maybe I know I have to be patient as she describes the situation instead of trying to fix things based on the first three words that come out of her mouth. You know what I mean? As you know each other, that will help test your communication to make sure it's reliable. The light that fueled our fire then has burned a hole between us so we cannot seem to reach an end, crippling our communication. That's eros. So if you don't know, in the Greek language there are four words for love. There's agape, phileo, storge, and eros. Eros is the erotic love, obviously. It's the one that attracts you, the one compels. It's the most fleeting. It's the one with no promise, and it promises nothing. It just tempts. It compels. Agape is the fatherly love, or the transcendent hierarchical love. Phileo is the brotherly love. You're in this together. You're standing beside somebody. Storge is parent love. And if you're in a proper relationship, you will experience all of those. But the light that attracted them, which was eros, pulls them close. And if eros is all you have and you have nothing else and you don't invest in the other versions of love that there are, it will burn you. And why will it burn you? Well, girls grow older and lose their youth and beauty. Men lose their strength. And eros is fleeting. She can say no and he can lose interest. And if that's all you have holding you together, well, that pieces fall apart really quick. So as you're in a relationship, it's not just the duality of attraction. Eros starts it, sure, that's agency, but you need to invest in something else as you're with your mate. So far, I think the song is describing division, but the process of constant unity. Though there is division there needs to be unity. It's like an ebb and flow of unity, of understanding. And as you invest in the other loves, that's when communication starts to solidify, because you start to like work and do things for a better aim. Like when you hit storge, when you have children, now you can have the children be a common denominator while you do things. When you have agape, that's like your religious or political practice of beliefs or something like that. You can both agree on that, or at least you should try to have an understanding there. Phileo, you're on this mission together. Both of you work, you help pay bills, you do stuff around the house. If it's just eros, you're doomed. I know the pieces fit because I watched them tumble down. No fault, none to blame. It doesn't mean I don't desire to point the finger, blame the other, and watch the temple topple over. To bring the pieces back together, rediscover communication. Okay. Well, this has Garden of Eden written all over it. After Eve ate the apple, and then Adam sat there silently, and then took a piece from her and ate it as well. First thing when God came a-calling, Adam said, it wasn't me, it was the woman you gave me. And then Eve was like, it wasn't me, it was the serpent. And the serpent had nobody to point his fingers to. But you want to look for someone to blame. You want, as there's duality, somebody that's not you, maybe you're higher on the tier of perfection. That's kind of what you're saying when you're like, it's their fault. They are less than me. I would not have done that. And you have these struggles in your relationships where you can blame the other person for something that's so insignificant. But then you're focusing this way instead of cultivating yourself. It's one of those questions like, how do I find the perfect girl or perfect man? That's the worst question. The question is the other way. How do I become a person worthy of the perfect one? And that's how you work on your communication skills. And that's how you assimilate yourself into your role and your duty in society. The temple toppling over, bringing the pieces back together, that has a little bit of Tower of Babel kind of connotations, and a lot of the summaries I saw online did refer to the Tower of Babel. I don't think that's quite right. That's more like a permanent separation. I think that's what that's talking about. I mean, you can make a analogy to the Tower of Babel, absolutely. But I think when you point the finger, watch the temple topple over, like smash your identity. Like your identity's in the other person at the moment when you're in that schism of a relationship. Because you're trying to relate to each other. That's the attempt anyway. It's the assumed attempt in this song. It's more like wrecking the relationship and then maybe looking for somebody else to start something new. Rediscover communication. Although, once you get so far up there, like if you travel through time, because that's what you do with your mate, you travel through time or your partner or whatever, and you get further along, if you do not communicate, it's like you're both on separate towers and you're separated that much further from each other. So what happens is you want a traumatic incident because, well, maybe you don't, but the something that'll quickly draw you together is something traumatic. Something like a car crash, literally, or you lose your house, or somebody loses a parent, or it's usually not a victory. It's something that's a common denominator low that brings everybody down. And you can even do that as you're being accusatory toward your mates towards something else. You guys can fight all the time. That's one way to bring the relationship down. And then how you build it back up, well, that's also uniting. But then you kind of get into like a Stockholm syndrome, right? Where you can actually get addicted to being bashed around and being treated like something less than you are. So there's danger in that as well. There was a time that the pieces fit, but I watched them fall away, mildewed and smouldering, strangled by our coveting. And that's the fall from innocence, and that's again the Garden of Eden. You wanted to have the knowledge of God, the knowledge of good and evil. And that strangles communication, because now your nature has been violated. Now you can choose to violate your nature. You don't have to, but you can choose to do it. Now, I think that's where the concept of original sin comes from. We have a nature, and we are brilliant comparatively to like the rest of the animals on the planet. We don't have to violate it, but we can. And it's as easy to violate our nature as it is to do it. That's free will. You got to build up some hardcore disciplines in yourself to prevent from violating your own nature. The nature you should have in culture. And the next question would be like, how do you know what cultures is the better one between, all of them that have ever existed? And the answer to that, it's quite lengthy as far as I can tell, but it's something like, thou shalt not commit adultery, and don't steal, and don't kill. Like, those are like the big ones right there. Made in the image of God is certainly one that surrounds all of that, because you have to give humans dignity. And it has to come from somewhere else besides another human, otherwise it's relative. And then Well, that group of people doesn't have to be alive. That was the Soviet Union's kind of dealing during the Cold War, as far as I could tell. Like, oh yeah, we got plenty of food. Well, let's not feed. We actually don't. Let's not feed that town. You know, that gets really scary really quick when you don't have dignity given to your common man. When God dies. Done the math enough to know the dangers of our second guessing, doomed to crumble unless we grow and strengthen our communication. So, the dangers of your second guessing. That is the freeze. That is you have a situation in front of you. And you've heard of the fight or flight. It's neither of those. It's like you don't do anything. You just stand there. That's inactivity. And it's one thing for sloth to take over, right? You just lay in your bed all day. It's another thing to, when you are about to be tested, you choose not to take the test. Or you're too shocked, like you didn't know a test was coming. You didn't know your mortality was in front of your face. You didn't know overeating would somehow make you unhealthy. You didn't know smoking would give you lung cancer. Like, it's not that you didn't know. You just chose not to acknowledge it. Something like that. So that's the freeze. You're second guessing yourself instead of actually putting yourself into reality. Instead of engaging with your mate, with the person you're with the schismatic, I think it's a word, the schismatic process. Because though you are different, you still need to relate in reality. But the whole doomed to crumble unless we grow, that is 100% true. If you don't continue pursuing life, if you don't continue to make yourself better, the opposite happens. That could be anything, like read a book, play a video game, go to work. But stagnation, that's a fast fall, man. That's one way to doom yourself and make everybody around you depressed. You'd be like a black hole if you do not put yourself into anything, especially if you get older, like past your 20s and 30s. That doesn't mean there's no hope. It just means you won't be the life of the party, that's for sure. And there's a strengthening agent in being tested. This is you and your mate contending with each other. You want somebody competent you can talk with that will point out your flaws. Because the longer they are with you, the more they will dig and get under your skin. And you can let that get to you, sure. Or you can get stronger because of that and become a better person. And then they can't poke in so hard anymore. And they can do the same for you. It's like the trials you meet with your mate as you're going through all four of those loves in this life together can be met head on and can be strong, and they can be a great example for the next generation. And then that last line, cold silence has a tendency to atrophy any sense of compassion between supposed lovers. Supposed. So I guess supposed assumes relationship, assumes the agency. But that is the opposite of love. The opposite of love is silence, is no communication. It's neglect. That's the opposite of love. Hate's one thing, but hate, that's the smoldering. At least there's a relationship there. There's something to do. You put out the fire. Mildew, that's damp and stagnant. Well, you can clean that up and get it moving. There are ways around that, but cold silence where you're just not doing anything, you're staring straight ahead, which is usually more of a masculine trait because the agency is in the male. The agency for beauty, for visual compulsion is in the male in the biological sphere of things. That's just how things are. Women tend to be more social. So communication, I'm not going to say it's not a problem with them, but maybe articulating directly. My wife tells me she looked in on this, like she has to use more direct, precise words, and she has to be intentional with her language. For instance, hey, if you get a chance, can you take the laundry down? Sure. And then I won't do it for hours. Instead, could you please take the laundry down right now? Two different ways of saying the same thing, but one will get it done because it's intentional, direct, and specific. But it's also a little invasive because I could be like, what, I'm doing something right now. Now? You want me to do it right now? Like, that could be the response I could have if I'm not tempered correctly to react to my mate accordingly. And that's where you get the love versus respect paradigm. And that's huge in the scriptural sense. Men should love their wives, and wives should respect their husbands. Because the agency is in the man. The idea is I do everything for you the right way. And I listen to you. Because you're important. I am subjecting myself to you. I am the hero. Right? That's kind of how that works. She respects you because you're the one that fights the demons. You're the one that goes out and defends the castle. And you do the harder job. You should do the harder job. And you save her when she needs saving. And you comfort her when she needs it as well. You pursue her for the sake of life. And that's exactly what happens. Love has to be intentional. Now, the pattern I was talking about earlier. So, schism here, again, I do not think it's like hardly anything to do with the religious element per se, like the modern Christian church or Catholic or whatever. Because Maynard, those guys read the same books I did, as far as Joseph Campbell and a good bit of Carl Jung. And you can put this entire thing right over the hero's story. The idea where things start out as normal, you go into the unknown, you might even die, and then you, in a certain way, then you come back with a gift. And you continue to do that, and that's like the ever fractaling out hero's story of improvement and rejuvenation. So how does that work? Well, I know the pieces fit because I watched them fall away. So that's you in the normal, and then falling down to the chaos. That's the unknown. The known and the unknown, and you being the knower. And both genders have this in them. We are just given more of a role in the flesh, obviously. I would say even for the sake of agency. Mildewed and smouldering, fundamental and differing. So that's like stagnation will draw you. Actually, if you're here in the hero's journey, it's either you're going to be intentionally, you're going to go into the unknown by yourself with your own free will, or you're going to be thrown into it, one or the other. Either way, you're going to just due to the nature of time, the unknown lies before you. It's going to happen. Fundamental and differing, so that's the known and the unknown. That's the difference between what you know and what you don't know. And you are the knower in the process, and that's you going into the unknown. They're definitely different, but they have to have a relationship because of the knower. Pure intentions juxtaposed will set two lovers' souls in motion. I know I'm kind of going over this twice, but it is worth it. So what's your intention as chaos? Well, you're doing everything and nothing at the same time. What's your intention as order or to know? Well, you're trying to like put a box around things and figure them out. Like this is this. Again, let there be light. Light is the first thing that lets us distinguish one thing from another. So it also helps cultivate chaos, cultivate the unknown to something that is knowable. This is one of the reasons why I think the masculine is more identified with order, and the feminine is more identified with the concept of chaos. And the masculine can treat the feminine as if she's beautiful because she is. She is made in that certain image. I think, as far as I can tell, the women and whatever the highlights are in mankind, that's in the women, and that's why they're awesome. Testing communication, well, that's going into the unknown. The light that fueled our fire then has burned a hole between us. So is oftentimes adventure's fun. You want to go in there, but then when you're in there for like 3 straight days in the dark chaos, something besides just fun is going to come out. Like, I need to eat some food. I'm tired of fighting monsters for like 3 days straight. You know, something else is going to have to build your resilience. Otherwise, you're just not going to make it. Doesn't mean I don't desire to point the finger and blame the other. Whose fault is it you're in the unknown? Well, it's the nature of time. Are you going to yell at time? Like, how do you do that? You know what I mean? You're going to be in the unknown at some point in your life, and you know you're going to be. What are you doing to prepare for it? Not your partner, not the chaos, not the light. The only thing you can work on and choose to do is work on yourself. The part where it's strangled by or coveting, that's again, what are you looking for when you go into the unknown? Well, if you go there voluntarily, there's potential bounty in the unknown. You go into the jungle, there's potential food there. There's also monsters that might eat you. But you need to go out there to get food. So what are you going to do? But that's like the coveting agency. I've done the math enough to know the dangers of our second guessing. Again, that's if you're on the path, and this is why I think Christ said, you know, he who puts his hand to the plow and then turns back is not worthy to be in the kingdom. Something like you're on your way and then you just stop moving. But the only place you're really going to stop moving is when you're in the unknown, when you're in the chaotic hell that might actually kill you. And then you stay down there. And that's taking your hand off the plow of whatever you are called to do in this life. The last one that overlaps the hero's story, as far as I can tell, is the cold silence has a tendency to atrophy any sense of compassion between supposed lovers. And that's having a lack of relationship, and that's just stopping. And that's not continuing. But you have to choose to do that. There is agency inside of every one of us to do something. You can choose not to. You almost have to willfully choose not to. That's why we're given, as far as I can tell, agencies in the negative, right? We have to breathe, so air is good. We need water. We need food. We prefer comfort, not freezing to death or boiling alive. And those are things, if you don't do anything, they're going to pull to you. That's your biology telling you to do something. Because you are a story, and so am I. We need to do something with our lives. And I think that's one of the reasons that music is so interesting to us, and it pulls us, and it sounds more serious than the words we would say to ourselves or to other people because of the message that's in there. It might be a feeling, sure, but non-lyrical music, that has its place, but usually you're playing that because you're not focusing on it. If you want to focus on a song, the lyrics have deep meaning, just like this one. And you have the relationship between the masculine and the feminine, and you could possibly have a religious faction in there. I don't think so. And then you also have the hero's journey, your relationship between the known and the unknown. You, the knower. And that's the hero's journey. And if you want to dive with me a little deeper into the hero's journey, check out this video that YouTube recommends. I'd appreciate it. Subscribe down below. We'll see how far this goes.